special rules were given to people that if you got a girl in certain areas, you were allowed to have a second child. So there's, in a lot of families, you would prefer to have sons, girls would be adopted away and such, and this creates an imbalance in the men and women population as far more sons were born. So this shows how the state and the nation building heavily intersects with gender.
Yeah, and it does so in different ways here,
Yeah.
right? How?
You know, you have the obvious like family structure, women as reproducers and carrying forth the nation, carrying on birthing the next generation. But you also have the masculinities and femininities of men as providers, and thus being important to maintain the family structure and the nation structure, and therefore girls generally not being preferred, and this creating a gender imbalance in that generation.
Yeah, so that's an excellent example of the intersection. Just by, what does it look like now, that policy? You know?
It's not it's not in place anymore. There's no like one-child policy anymore. But currently there is in that generation, there are way more men than women, and that's kind of an issue, that there are so many more men than women in this generation. And internationally, it also looks like there's a lot of Chinese adoptees, like international adoptees, and basically all of them are girls. So that's
and if I'm correct, not only is the one-child policy abolished, the Chinese government is also on the move in the other direction, right? Am I right? Does anyone know? Like in many other countries, there's the perception that we face a population crisis. You know, an aging population. Who will take care of it? Who will sustain the economy? It's a massive cost to pay pensions to this, and political leadership says, well, how should we address this demographic challenge? So what's the credo now from the government? It's an encouragement to bear more children.
Exactly. So there are two economical reasons, I think. More like family policies.
Yeah.
And like we said, it's an issue now because now you have, as we talked about, women as reproducers of the nation. When you don't have a lot of women, because there's this imbalance, then that becomes, especially with the population crisis.
Yeah.
Now that these children have grown up, it's a question of like how do we bring the next generation forward.
I'm not sure how, because I'm not a China expert, in which ways and to what extent this policy is explicitly linked to nationalist ideologies. Do you know? I mean, in terms of justifying the policy.
Well, there's the links to the Chinese state and like supporting the regime and the government, and also in today's it's very linked to identity, and like the abolishment also has to do with we need to continue having children. We can't have a population crisis, and that has to do with the sustainment of the nation.
So it's the policy is actually framed in nationalist terms, also in terms of not only the economy but also state security and the survival of the nation. Yeah, very good. Any questions, comments, reflections?
I don't know, but maybe it's too specific, but do you know, because I guess some families didn't have one children, but they hide the second one, but where they like repressed by the government, like if the government finds out that they have another child or something, or twins, I don't know, but like maybe it's too specific, but
I'm
interesting.
not sure exactly what the specific penalty was, but there were some regions where you were allowed to have a second child if your first child was a girl. But well, I'm not sure entirely of what the penalty was. Like we said, this led to a lot of people giving up their children, their first child, if there was a daughter, for example.
No.
But I'm not entirely sure if there were those kinds of cases.
Of course, it's not only there. We have similar discussions about concerns about the demography, the population, all across the world, right? Any other cases that comes to mind? Japan, yeah. And one case where it's been framed in explicitly nationalist terms, a very well-known case. I think it's some years ago now, but I think that probably the proposition still stands. It's in Hungary, where the government were fairly explicit about the risks of not having enough Hungarian children being born. So it's linked, and of course in some cases it's linked to ideas of population transfers, we become minorities in our own country, sort of argument.
I think like last year, President Macron said something like, we need to rearm demographically France, and it made a scandal because everyone said like that he sees women as weapons or like a birth machine or something, and this was.
When did you say that?
Last year, I don't remember when, but it made a lot of noise in the media.
Talking about women as cows in the.
Yeah, exactly. It was really weird, and also like he also don't have children, so it was kind of ironic that he said that.
It just struck me when you said that okay, last year, because the types of political metaphors that have currency now are very much related to the domain of war making and those sort of metaphors, which is of course no coincidence during this decade. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, it was in January 2024.
Yeah.
So 2 years, and yeah, some says injunction, like nationalists injunction. I don't know. Can you say that? Injonction. Like something nationalist.
So most and you see this metaphor or types of justification in terms of preparedness for war or something creeping into most domains in terms of justifying, arguing for a particular policy. We've seen it very clearly in Sweden over the last few years, where each and every proposal is justified with it will contribute to national preparedness. So the types of perspectives, angles, and metaphors and frames that you use are obviously no coincidence. Okay, good. Let's see if we have time for. If you have another example, let's move to your group.
So I will also talk about the link with family. So we talked about France after World War II, because like during the German occupation, the majority of the people were collaborating with the Nazis, and the resistance was really like lethal. And after the liberation, the new government wanted to create the myth that the France was resisting during all this occupation, and they wanted to like a revenge against the people who collaborated. But the people who were mostly humiliated were women, and those women that were accused of collaborating and specifically having sexual relations with the Germans, even though sometimes it was a rape more than sexual relations. They were shaved, they were forced to walk in the streets naked, they were also raped by French people, they were killed, it was really horrible. And at the same time, men, like most of the men were still like CEO of companies and stuff. And so we use this example to explain that the the humiliations of those women contributed to like reinforce the nation's I don't know idea, and also reinforce the family values because those women were cheaters and they were accused to betray the family values and stuff. So it's a mix of like virility and nationalism, I think.
So how do you think about the fact that this, because it happened of course in other
Yeah,
countries
also
too,
in other
Norway,
countries.
Denmark and so on. Why is it so sensitive? The fact that if women have had relations with, how can we understand that or theorize that?
Because they are considered as the mother of the nation and the protectors of the boundaries of the nation.
Mm.
Connected to the honor of the nation as well, like
Mm.
the embarrassment of having cooperated with the Germans.
Mm.
There's also, you know, the notion of like the traditional woman. I think this was a term often used that the traditional woman is kind of a symbol for the nation. So when that's kind of broken, it's either an atrocity or a betrayal. I think there was very similar in South Korea during World War II with Japanese occupation and the comfort women, but that was very much framed as like how these women, that framed them more as victims, whereas in France it was clearly very different, that they were seen as kind of like figures, even though it was quite similar circumstances.
So what did that framing lead to, that they described women as victims? Were they in turn victimized after the war, or?
There's, it frames very much like the South Korean traditional woman as kind of a symbol of the nation and a symbol of the oppression that South Korea faced under Japanese occupation. So that's kind of symbolized through these women.
Okay, so they were portrayed rather as brave resistors.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah.
Who should be protected from the enemy, if you will.
Yes, so that can lead to an argument of in the future we need to be able to protect.
Exactly.
No, it's interesting because whichever way you turn that, if in the French case then, if women willingly had relationships with the Germans, they were traitors, and if they were raped, they were also traitors, but in a different way, right? More unwillingly, but still not upholding honor. There was one thing in your that was completely new to me. An example you wrote about the different symbols, female symbols of the French nation. I wasn't aware. Can you tell us?
Yeah, so officially, like I don't know if it's in the constitution, but officially the representation of France is of the Republic is a woman called Marianne. She's not real. It's just a symbol. She's really like painted always like half naked because it's freedom against monarchy. It's like really like revolutionary, but the far right populism and especially like Le Pen's party, they don't really like Marianne, and instead they use another figure that has like historically existed, Jeanne of Arc, because she represents like Christianity and monarchy. Because so Jeanne of Arc, she was the leader of the French army during the Middle Age, and she fought against the British because the British, they conquered the whole France, and she convinced the inheritant of the crown to become king instead of abandoning, and she claimed that she was hearing the voice of God, blah blah blah, and the leader of the far right, I mean now he's dead, but the
Le Pen senior.
yes, the Jean-Marie Le Pen. There is a super famous video on TV and on the media that in the commemorations for Jeanne of Arc, he screamed at the statue and he's like, Jeanne, save us all! Like it's really like they always use Jeanne of Arc as like the symbol of France instead of Marianne because she's revolutionary and stuff. So I just used this example with religion, yes, because she's representative of Christianity and God.
Mm. Whereas Marianne is more associated with the French Revolution.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Okay, good. So,
we thought about talking about the family example as well, but maybe I should take the religion to spice it up. With the religious part, we took the example of Saudi Arabia and their regime, and more specifically like pre-2019 when women weren't allowed to drive, or they're still kind of restricted in Saudi Arabia, their movements without a male guardian, but before 2019 they couldn't even drive in the country. So we took that as an connecting to what the text wrote about, like women's reproductive health, how that can be used to control women. And I found a really good study that took women in Saudi Arabia and asked them what was the biggest hinder for them, the biggest obstacle for them to go to a clinic or to get health advice and stuff like that. And like 50% of them answered that I cannot move around freely, that I cannot just walk to the clinic and say, hi, I need this and this. So even if they have birth control and there are no like forced sterilization and stuff like that, they are still kind of controlled of when and where they can get health. And that is connected to religion because of the laws is religious laws. It's the Wahhabism, really extremist Islam laws, and that in like a indirect way is controlling and restricting these women, like the examples that Suruchi wrote in her text.
Yeah, reflections, thoughts on that. Yeah, it's and then you can connect. Obviously, you can. I'm not sure if that's done in the case of Saudi Arabia, but you could connect this. The link between religion and family can also easily be linked to the nation.
Yeah. They want, it's kind of done here as well. It's because also the Wahhabism is a form of Islam that came from like Saudi Arabian prince in the 1700s or so. So it's really like a nationalist religion part of Islam. So it's really connected to the country itself.
Yeah. So is it inscribed in the constitution that it should be that particular version of?
I think so. Just because it's like the father of the nation, like the old prince in the 1700s is like really like the old still it's still his family that rules Saudi Arabia and stuff like that. So
Yeah, because you have the monarchy, and of course monarchy is hereditary linked to a certain family. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but perhaps I did. That's the modern Saudi Arabia came together as a compromise between the House of Saud on the one hand and these religious groups on the other. So there had to be compromises and merging the hereditary monarchy element of to found the nation and this particular religious interpretation of Islam.
But what do you think of the, like you said in 2019 the woman can drive, but do you think like, how do you explain that? Because maybe like as regarding the religion it can seem like a backwards from religion because you give more freedom to women. Like, I don't know if
they still can go to a clinic without the
Yeah.
male approval. So I think that aspect is still holding up. But I think the main conclusion of that decision was more of a front than an actual equality decision, because women in Saudi Arabia is still not equal to a man. So I saw a lot of articles that said that discussed that it was maybe more of a front on for the other parts of the world. Like, oh yeah, we are opening up, but the monarchy or like the House of Saud, there are different ideologies in that monarchy as well. So that was a decision by the like liberal parts of the monarchy. So I think they have some kind of argument that this still connects to religion because of that and that, but because they're done by the same house in the same monarchy, I think religion must have some. They must have some kind of excuse for it. But I think a front for the other parts of the world was the main reason for that decision.
Yeah, it ties to Eileen's lecture, if you take it up, when she spoke, I assume, on autocratic gender washing.
The majority in parliament and stuff like that.
Yeah, as different ways for autocrats to present themselves as more legit.
Exactly.
Okay, we'll turn to you now. What example do you have? Which one would you prefer to?
We also have an example regarding the family from Louis Chappelle's article about the state and the governance. So one example is in the many post-colonial states and maybe Middle East, where the family laws, such as laws governing marriage, inheritance, divorce and child custody, are placed under control of tribal authorities and religious institutions rather than the state. As a result, issues that are central to women's equality remain outside the national political institutions. So nations organized around patriarchal family structures, women are often seen as the head of the family. And also at the same time, this also reflects how gender relations shapes the demands of nationalism, as nationalist projects are often based on traditional ideas of family, culture and social order. And by allowing religious or traditional institutions to control family laws, these gender structures are preserved, which in practice means that national citizenship and political power are more closely tied to men than to women.
Questions, comments, reflections? Okay. We have a few minutes left. Is there? I saw that all of you had really good examples. Is there anything else that you want to voice, either in terms of sharing an example or by pointing to some theoretical connection in this regard that we have overlooked? It becomes perhaps more evident, this exercise when you, well, you know, I'm not saying we had this exact same exercise 10 years ago. I wasn't even here 10 years ago. But if you would have had this exercise 10 years ago, or say 15 years ago, when sort of ethnic nationalism wasn't as strong in the world, perhaps people would have struggled more to connect, to make the empirical connections, or to see, to read this into empirical examples. But as ethno-nationalism is on the rise, it becomes more self-evident that the links between the cultural understanding of the nation, an ethnic understanding of the nation, is connected, how that is gendered, because in many ways those very movements that promote and propose ethno-nationalism tend to be gender conservative, and that tends to be an integral part of the argument. So it's not as far-fetched as, okay, 20 years ago, when you told and the world was seemed to be on the move towards globalization and people moving across the globe anywhere and sort of cutting themselves loose from traditional identities, then it was more far-fetched and more difficult to make people see the connections that perhaps are very upfront today. Okay, that was that. A few minutes left. Is there any general questions about the course or remarks? Perhaps first of all